Hello students, continuing with our session on the Natyashastra, today we take up the concept of aesthetics in the Indian context, the concept of rasa and the concept of bhav, which are central to the text Natyashastra. When we talk about aesthetics originally means pertaining to or something which is perceptible by senses, that is something which is material, or the philosophy which is related to fine arts. We can say it broadly as a theory of beautiful in general. The theories of imitation, we have read about it in the context of Plato and Aristotle, illusion. They all are idealized representation of aesthetics from the point of view of the artist. Now, in the context of India, aesthetics means science and philosophy of fine art. Now, when we say science and philosophy of fine art, we mean that it is science of fine art because the problem of art is originally a problem of the technique of art. And therefore, the philosophy of art, as we discuss, is primarily concerned with the technique, and philosophy, of course, is closely related to it. Now, it is a philosophy of fine art because when we talk about experience that a work of art arouses is an aesthete, and further, which is accounted in terms of different schools of philosophical thoughts. And there are various schools of thoughts in India. But talking about the Indian art, how it evolved with an emphasis on inducing or ascribing special spiritual or philosophical states in the audience, or what we say as by representing them symbolically, it tried to induce some kind of a state of philosophy among the spectators or among the audience in particular, because we are talking about Natya Shastra. Now, when we say that the different schools of philosophical thoughts in India, they are considered to be authorities on, say, arts, poetry, music, architecture, and so on. But all of them, they have something in common. And this commonness is that they present the absolute with a capital A, as conceived by all the schools. And primarily, there are three major schools of philosophy of art. The first is Ras Brahmavad. Now, this school deals with the experience of absolute in literature because it talks about the rus that it creates among the spectators. Then we have the Nad Brahmavad, the school which deals with the experience of absolute in music, because it is said that this cosmos or this universe was created out of the Nad. So, Nad is music. And Vastu Brahmavad, it is a school which deals with the experience of absolute in architecture. Now, what is common between them is they all talk about experience. They all deal with the absolute. So, Ras, Nad, and Vastu Brahmavad, they are the various schools that deal with the experience of the absolute in literature, music, and architecture. Now, coming to Natya Shastra, Satyadev Chaudhary, he has divided, or for the sake of convenience, he has categorized the entire Sanskrit poetics, not just Natya Shastra, but the entire Sanskrit poetics into 10 constituents, which are known as Kavyangas. So the first is Kavya Swarup, where he says the writer, the author, talks about the nature of poetry. Now, this can further be classified as the causes of poetry, the definition of poetry, the various classifications of poetry, and the purpose of poetry. Then we have the second constituent, which is called Shabd Shakti, that is, The significance and relevance of the spoken word, that is जो बोला जाता है, शब्द शक्ति, उसकी शक्ति. ध्वनि काव्य, that is the piece of poetry which contains aesthetic suggestivity, that means something which is suggested, or aesthetics which are suggested by the use of ध्वनि, ध्वनि के माध्यम से जो प्रोड्यूस किया जाए. Then we have gunbhoot, that is the piece of poetry where suggested sense is obviously secondary to the primary sense because it talks about a gun. It's not just the primary sense of dhwani and shabd, going into the deeper details of the gun that it carries, the meaning that it carries. Then we have the ras. The ras is the fifth constituent, which is like in a layman's translation, it is known as sentiment, which is just for poetic relish, but it again induces so many bhav among the audience. Then we have guna, gun, that is the excellences of poetic expressions. Then we have the riti constituent, that is the style how a poetry is composed, the style and the structure, the riti. Then we have alamkara, which is the use of figurative words to enhance the beauty of poetry, because alamkara is very important. Figurative figures of speech are important as they enhance the beauty of the text. Then we have dosh, all the blemishes, all the flaws which are present in the poetic expression is the next constituent. And the last is the natya vidhan, that is the science of theatre or dramaturgy, that is all the stagecraft which it involves, how a stage is constructed, what should be the setting, what are the props that are used, all things related to the natya, that is natya ka jo vidhan hai, that is the science of theatre or dramaturgy. Now, when we talk of Natyashastra, we say that something which is very peculiar or particular to Indian drama, Sanskrit drama, or Natyashastra in particular, is the term bhav, which is defined as the state of mind, and ras, which is defined as, which refers to the emotional flavors or the essence, because ras actually means essence, juice or essence. So the flavors or essence which are crafted into the work by the author or the writer and further relished by a sensitive spectator who is at the same level of consciousness, or sahriday, which is elaborated as a spectator who has a positive taste and mind because he brings himself at the same level of identification, at the same level of consciousness with the author, and then enjoys the text. The spectator or the reader enjoys the text in the same manner, relishes the text, and produces and creates the same ras and bhav which were intended by the author. But this is important to notice and understand that rasas are created by the bhav, the kind of bhav or the state of mind. Say, for example, when we start reading a text, we always start reading a text with some kind of positivity and inclination towards the text. If we sit with the wrong vibration or with the wrong state of mind, we will not be enjoying the text. So, bhav is important. हम कैसा भाव रखते हैं टेक्स्ट के प्रति पढ़ने से पहले और पढ़ने के दौरान. So all these rasas or the essences or the juices or flavors which are crafted into, has already been crafted by the writer into the text, but will only be relished by the spectator or the reader when he is sahriday, when he understands and create the same bhav that should produce the intended kind of rasas as intended by the author. Now, the Natyashastra has enlisted eight bhavs with eight corresponding rasas. We will discuss these rasas and bhavs in our next session in detail. But just for the time being, to take a notice and cognizance of what these rasas and bhav are, so that we can read further as assignment, we have the first, because we are talking about the sthai bhavs, like which is the basic inbuilt structure, the basic sentiments, and then they are driven or modified by social living or humanization, whatever we say. But these sthai bhavs, basic mental states, are eight in number, which are inherent in every human being all the time. The first is rati, which like the corresponding rasa is love. The bhav of rati, eight bhavs, it produces the ras of love. Then we have hasya, which is related with mirth. Then we have shok, which is sorrow, which actually results into sorrow. Krodh, that is anger. Utsah, which is energy. Bhay, which is terror. Jugupsa is disgust. And Vismay is astonishment. Now, these eight bhavs and eight corresponding rasas are mentioned in the Natyashastra in the following passage, which has been written on the slide. All these bhav and the corresponding rasas as mentioned in the Natyashastra. The corresponding rasas, which we term as aesthetic sentiments. So, what we say is that sthai bhav was rati. The corresponding or the aesthetic sentiment created out of rati was love, and accordingly. So, these were the broad divisions of the eight bhavs and the eight corresponding rasas as per the Natya Shastra. We continue this session and elaborate upon the concept of ras and bhav in our next session. Thank you.